All right, it's Sunday night, the 5th of January. The time is just a little past 6 o'clock. We're looking at the moon. That's how big it looks on the screen. So to get an idea of how wide the screen is, that's 30 arc minutes, and maybe another half. So about, like I'm estimated to begin with, 110 to 115 arc minutes. Now we're going to zoom in, fill the screen. Having a little trouble actually getting the moon to not overwhelm the imager. I'm in planet mode right now. Let's see, we're now filling the moon up. We're at 110%, and there's our view of the moon. I can, of course, well, the histogram doesn't seem to be giving me any controls here. Display gamma. Ooh, well, I can play with some other stuff. Display contrast. Display brightness. Ooh, we're losing it there. And saturation, the color, that was a bit oversaturated, as you might recall. I can check sun color. I can put in defaults. Here we are at, once again, 100%. It's not quite taking up the field, so it must be about 35 arc minutes in displacement on the screen. Now all this is just a lead in to what I really want to do tonight, which is to go through the circumpolar list. I need to capture 3 galaxies I was able to capture last night for the previous video I'm working on, and then a range of other studies. There is our look. Now an hour after sunset, give you an idea what the skies are like around here. There's a lot of dust. Look at the aura around the moon. Dust and also aircraft exhaust particulate. We get a lot of chemical or trails behind all the airplanes that are flying between the military base Davis-Monthan and the local Tucson airport. This is what ends up in the sky, and of course when you've got buildings nearby that all have their lights on, plus the downtown center to the south, you are going to end up with a great deal of light pollution, despite the fact that the Sonora Desert and Tucson are actually quite favorable in terms of their attitude towards astronomical. It's known as the city of gastronomy because it's got a lot of variety of good food, and astronomy as well. Here we have a recap of NGC225. It's almost 20 minutes to 7 o'clock. We're operating at 5-second exposure times. I was able to do 10 seconds last night. Over here on the right, you can see where I'm doing the cutoffs for luminosity in the sky as we experience by watching the moon, and also can set the background sky. I'm going to try to eliminate the patchwork I'm seeing there. Here's our view of NGC225 to begin the series of NGC225 through 650, about 15 studies, and I do want to also capture NGC 48, 49, and 51, a galaxy group in Andromeda. Here we're having an early evening look at NGC 278. Appears to be like a planetary nebula or something right about there with a bright central star. It's well positioned on the screen. Let's zoom in. Yeah, I do believe that NGC 278 is a planetary nebula. I'm not going to spend much time on it, however, because I'm running battery on both the laptop and the camera, and I want to capture a number of results for tonight and inclusion in yesterday's videos. NGC 278. Okay, here we have NGC 281. Couldn't tell you what it is. Unlike the last planetary, this could be just a faint open cluster. As I said, because of sky conditions, I'm only running 5-second exposure times, which is basically probably giving me something like an 8-inch view of the sky. So we're going to run through this quickly because of battery life. Here's what I'm hoping is NGC225-650. Can't tell you where it is. All I can tell you is it's circumpolar. All that data will come your way tomorrow. So NGC225-650, it looks like if there's anything here, it's going to be in this region right here. A very faint cluster of very faint background stars. I might just play with the processing time here a little bit just to see if we can go to 10 seconds exposure. Let's give it a shot. We're about halfway through. No doubt I'll have to set up. This view here. Alright, yeah, it does look like we have more of an open cluster right there. The aesthetics are very poor, but I may stick with this. Just because it's now starting to, we're starting now to reveal that there's an open cluster in this region of the screen. Right there, NGC225-650. We'll move on to NGC225-650. NGC225-650 is our next study. 366, I'm sorry. NGC225-650 is our next study. Seem to be seeing some nice, interesting stars over in this region. There's a lot of compaction and faint stars here. Most everything's been turning up here on the screen, so we'll have to validate that tomorrow. Unfortunately, I had some problems with the camera, so it ended up disturbing the pointers, where the pointers would end up on the screen if we, in terms of being able to track down studies that we can't quite figure out. But there's our view, NGC225-650.
Try a horse and buggy instead if you're still driving around that SUV.
Here we have NGC225-651, and if I were to say anything, it would be a rather largest open cluster in this region of the screen right there. I may be taking a break in a few minutes. Sorry about that. There's something in the atmosphere. Probably dropped from a contrail or a jet. Anyway, so this is NGC225-651. In a few minutes, I'm going to have to go after those three galaxies, NGC40, 849, and 51. Here I'd like to think that we have NGC433. Apparently another open cluster, unless I zoom in and discover there's a planetary on the screen. Won't be doing much zooming tonight till we get to those galaxies. I'm just capturing these images so we have a sense of what is available in the circumpolar sky. Moving on. Here we have NGC436 at an unexpected location. It looks like if there's any kind of open cluster, it's down in this lower right-hand corner of the screen. However, you can never quite be sure until you validate using something like the Sky Live, etc. Data about right ascension and declination could be inaccurately entered into the database of the mount. We've been seeing just about everything, I thought, in this part of the screen here, but this might be another study entirely. All right, I guess I was correct. This is actually NGC457 that migrated from this part of the screen to that, and we are getting quite a good view. We are on 10 seconds. I've got the, we're getting really good sky. I'm going to actually move this over now that we have a chance to, because the sky is getting darker, especially in anticipation of the galaxies, which I'm about to go to now. Very intriguing open cluster in that part of the screen. Hope you enjoy it as much as I do. This is why we do our NGC tour, to identify those that really do catch our eyes. Maybe even a little bit of a zoom might be worthwhile on this one. There's our cluster. That right there is 80% zoomed in. Backing out. We'll end up with 16%. I don't understand why it does that, but it does. Your landing point on back. backing out can vary quite a bit from 16 to I think it was like 28% last night. What we should be seeing here is NGC225-650. I may end up playing with the histogram settings a little bit to bring it out. Usually like to put it right about the peak of luminosity there. This is, everything below this is masked. Do you see that? We've got ourselves a little tiny cluster of stars right there. I'm going to leave this baby right about where it's at. Now I can improve the background by sliding it up. Oh, it's still present. Let's do a little zoom in on this. Should also help us in determining where the galaxy should have turned up. Very nice. 80%, 90 zoom, and 100% zoom in. And as I said, presumably that means that every pixel is now being exposed to its own memory location. Excuse me. So we're getting the highest resolution view possible under the conditions at 100%. Now, we will go beyond that, and I'm not sure what value that has, but it does do so. So I'm going to go back to our original setting of 16%, and we will move on to our next NGC study in the circumpolar part of the sky. Here we should be seeing NGC562. It doesn't seem to be present on the screen, not sure what it is. Maybe well, there's a double star there, but it just doesn't look like a planetary. There's a void around it, interestingly enough. So maybe if we change our settings a little bit, go right back to the peak, run this down a little bit. No, kind of likes being way off over there. All right. I can't be sure what we're supposed to be seeing here, but this is the region of the screen that we should be seeing it in. NGC 562.
So I call up my big mama, tell her I'd be rolling.
Well, what I thought might have been 562 is actually NGC 581. Good thing I looked on the handset. Let's do another little zoom in on it. Very fine cluster. Some very bright, possibly foreground stars, but peppered with maybe 1.5 to 2 dozen stars that are obviously part of a cluster. NGC 581, and returning once again. Here we have another nice tight little open cluster, NGC 609, confirmed. It looks ooh, that was weird. We lost it. Maybe some clouds blew in. Well, let's see what we get once it does another exposure. Maybe I was premature, but there's definitely something right around this region here next to these two eyes and a nose. That's very peculiar. I'm going to have to look at that tomorrow. This may actually be a nebulous right here. We don't see much of them because of having the skies that we have pretty much masks out any nebula. But that's what I would suspect that is. So NGC 609, I'm not sure what we were seeing initially, but that's what we're seeing now.
Some nameless fear has taken a hold of me.
Here we have NGC 629. I've had to reposition the camera. I guess pushing the button displaced it. If there is a cluster, it's located right in this region of the screen. If we do a little bit of a zoom in, sometimes that makes it more apparent because more stars begin to pop out. There is our 80% view. Not much more than 12 stars visible in that region of the screen. Backing out once again. A lot of bright stars right around here. It'd be interesting to know what they are. And we are once again backing out to 16%. So the vagaries of using technical equipment never cease to amaze. Here we're having a look for NGC 637. I think it's the penultimate on my list of 15 for the evening. We will, of course, explore one more advanced. Now the scope did move quite significantly. What I would believe would be south from the pole, but it tilted towards the east. If there's a cluster to be seen here, it's right in this region here, although this looks like a trail of stars together. We're going to zoom in. Yeah, boy, it really does bring out the fainties when you do the zoom. So that's quite interesting to see. Clearly, pixelization is enhanced in terms of magnitudinal reach as you do the zoom function. So there is our view of NGC 637.
Without my head spinning round and round.
Well, my camera is flashing at me. The battery is getting low. This is our last study for this sequence, and I'm going to be able to do any kind of additional study for tomorrow. We'll just have to start with NGC 650. Once again, not sure where it is on the screen. In terms of clusters, there's probably one there. But let's do a little zoom in. Here we have something of very note right there, a nebulosity. You know what that is? That's the double cluster, I believe. The Double Planetary in Perseus, potentially. Does look like a double planetary. I'm going to have to say carpe noctem on this for the evening. Notice we only started to we got a better view of that as we zoomed in. And there is our maximum view of 130%. We're seeing some color, and I'm going to sign off carpe noctem with what I consider to be probably the double planetary in Perseus. Carpe noctem.
In saucer-shaped clouds, setting people up.